Hi, this is Greg Chambers with Chambers Pivot Industries. This one is called the two fastest ways to improve your selling skills in the complex sale and or for the complex sale. And the reason that you'd want to do this, the reason you're listening is because I have spent a lifetime in sales and marketing. And in there, I've worked from everything from the what I consider simple sales. And when I say simple, it's only in terms of the decision is relatively, it's not earth shattering for the business that is making it, as opposed to a complex sale, which would be a decision has a big impact or is considered to have a big impact on the business. That doesn't mean that a simple sale has any less of an ROI, but it usually means that the complex sale touches on more parts of the organization and is therefore, and is really, it's only more complex in that the decision making is a little more complex. So how do I differentiate these things? I differentiate them with, actually, I wrote some of these things out, by a price. So that's one big one. If generally complex sales tend to have higher prices attached to them. There tends to be more decision makers involved in the complex sale than inside the simpler sale. Okay, so when we're defining the simple versus complex, the simple sale is a little more price oriented. The complex sale is a little more results oriented. There's usually fewer people in the decision process in a simpler sale. Compare that on the spectrum to a complex sale, which we're going to be talking about in this teleseminar, is multiple people inside the decision process. So on one side, we have one person. On the other one, we have lots of people. A simpler sale may involve just one or a few calls. A complex sale may involve a lot of calls. A simple sale may touch on one issue. A complex sale, a complicated sale, would touch on multiple issues. Generally, the simple sales have lower prices. Complex sales is a larger investment required. And then, in general, the simpler sales have lower margin inside of them. The complex sales have higher margins. So the people that I end up working with a lot are on business development teams. It can range anywhere from a professional salesperson to someone who it is just their job to bring in new business, but they don't consider themselves to be salespeople. When I put this together, I thought, what are the two fastest ways? Because it was actually asked to me, Greg, what are a couple things I could do to improve my hit rate, to get better opportunities, to close opportunities faster, for just general improvement. And the first thing that popped into my head was opportunities. When I'm doing coaching and coaching people through the entire sales cycle, their ability to generate new opportunities is the first place where you see a massive leap in effectiveness. So, and simply, usually that's all it takes. Just by getting better at developing an opportunity, really helping a client prioritize it, that's what leads to a big jump. And I'll cover three things that you can do under opportunities today, just after listening to this call. I'll give you some ideas. And then the second one is navigating the client's decision process. This one gets a little touchier, and that's usually why it's second. But after you've gotten really good at developing new opportunities, the next step is really understanding how it is that your customers are making decisions and helping them through that process. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. So I have three areas under each of these for you to think about, and let's go ahead and jump right into those. The first area under opportunities that where we can see the biggest improvement is when we're trying to develop new opportunities. It's the ability to listen for, to drill down on, and to ask questions around evidence. And if we believe that evidence is, why do we believe this to be true, right? That's what the client is saying. So when the client says something like, I need to develop more opportunities, it seems like there's no questions to really be asked around that. Um, but that's the difference in the complex sale, right? Our organization needs to develop more opportunities. Being able to develop that into a bigger case and really understand where it fits into the priorities of the organization, that is where the first big leap is. So, in general, let's see why. So when I say developing evidence, it's anything that can be measured. So if you're an easy way to think about it is it's anything that your client needs more of or less of. Every organization measures something. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get good at finding out what it is that they're measuring and then asking questions around that. So we listen for what it is measured. And the reason that that's important is because since they measure something, that's generally how you're going to be measured on the back end. So if you consider a complicated sales cycle and you say, okay, so we spend months with this client developing this opportunity, really understanding their needs, understanding their problems, knowing what results that they're after. We've got the whole thing, we're working it into this proposal. At that proposal moment, when that your proposal starts being circulated around the organization, the first thing they're going to look for is what, right? They're going to turn to the back page or wherever you put it, and it's going to be, they are going to look for the investment, right? Because then they want to go back and they want to look for the return on investment. When we are trying to develop evidence, the reason we're trying to develop evidence is because in most sales proposals that I've seen, the only numbers that are in the proposal are your investment. It's not even any numbers on their side. So if yours is the only number that's on there, that's all they have to go on, right? So they can see the investment, but they have no idea what the return is. So the evidence that we're after is evidence of that return, and it helps them make a better decision, right? I'm not saying that we're trying to do some quick math that fakes people out, because the reality is those numbers need to come from them. If they come from you, nobody believes them. And but if they can develop those numbers and you can help them develop those numbers, then when they see the investment, they can get it plugged in. So most of the examples I'm going to give you today are things that I've dealt with myself. So just recently, in talking to a large client, when we were talking about it, the questions were around, they were after a particular solution. Like, I really want to, this is what we really need help with. And then they gave that to me, and I said, okay. So, and where is it showing up in the organization that shows you that we need to do this? And it's basically like, it starts with, Greg, because we've been struggling with this for years. You're like, okay, so like, what is it now? Like, where is the business right now? And what came out was, we do a couple $1 million of business that we've developed over the course of a couple of years, but it hasn't grown in years. And not only that, as we started talking about it, it was every piece of the business that has come in, every piece of that business originated from the clients. So the clients were coming to them with this piece of business. And their question is how do we grow this? Because we don't know that it's sustainable, that we're always going to be, that clients are going to be looking to us for this information. So how are we going to be getting it going forward? It sounds like a nice opportunity, but it wasn't until we could get into the numbers, which is what is it now, right? So once you could define that number, $2 million a year is the run rate, then what do you want it to be? Well, we really think that this is a business of the future. This should be a $10 million business, right? And my question to them is, well, okay, so if that's what kind of time frame are we talking about? So that's over, let's say, 5 years, he says, that we think that this should be developed. So when we start putting that number together, then the opportunity becomes the difference between today and the difference between the future. So even if we take a regular ramp up of 2 to 2.5, then to 3, then to 4, right? You start adding those things up over the course of 5 years, and this becomes a multi-million-dollar opportunity. To me, it's one thing to think it, but my goal, my objective is to get them to express it. So when he says, right, so the numbers, the trick is not to do the numbers yourself, but just be kind of bad at math. So easy for me because I get to say, oh, you know what? I'm just not great at like head math. How much is that? And then when they throw it out, be conservative. One of the great salespeople that I follow who sells a lot of consulting is Alan Weiss. And Alan Weiss likes to say, once you have their number, check for the accuracy of it. And so in this case, he did say, you know, this is easily a $5 or $6 million opportunity over time. Then once he has expressed that, take half of it. And then that becomes the number that you work forward with. So you can become conservative, but still show that when they finally get around to considering the investment versus the return, there is a big value exchange there that helps them move forward. Because I'm not going to be able to give them that business, right? They have to do most of the work, but I can help contribute to getting there. And right now they're stuck. So in many ways, what I have to offer them, that way to get unstuck on this piece of business is almost as valuable as the $6 million that they're eventually going to be able to get, but they need to do a lot of things right in the between time. And it won't be, and unfortunately I won't be there to help with it because that's not what they need. They just need some ideas. They're very capable and they'll be able to get there themselves. So that's the first one. The first part of uncovering more opportunities is getting really good with evidence. Now, once the evidence, and I kind of went into this in that last example, is trying to understand once you have evidence that they want to get after something, what you want to do is you want to find out what the impact of that is to the organization. And a lot of what I'm saying, if you do this for a living, you know intuitively. But what I find is that when I sit with professionals and start to question them on this, and when we review calls, when we review plans for sales calls, these are the things that show up. So impact, to me, right, there's the impact to the organization, but really it's inside of an organization, like even that one, where it sounds like it's a big opportunity. It's where does it rank inside the organization right now? So what I'm talking about inside, when I'm talking about impact is not necessarily just the dollar impact. So again, that opportunity that I that I talked about in evidence, where we were able to establish what, is a pretty sizable opportunity. The key is to find out what is the impact inside the organization compared to other opportunities, right? So every organization, unless it's a really small organization, has competing priorities. So, and at some point they need to rank those against each other, and you need to find out where your opportunity fits in. So even though it may be perfectly in your sweet spot, it may have a fantastic financial and or cultural or whatever the result is inside of the organization. It may have all those things lined up and it may feel perfect to you. You need to find out because if it's a ranked number 7 on a list of 10 in things that they could do, if you were in that organization, you would say, oh, well, then you should really do 1 through 5 at least before you start looking at this opportunity with me again. This is, I do this thing where I pretend like I'm the scales of justice and I tip back and forth and I say, yes and no at this point, when you're developing opportunities, need to be of equal value, of equal weight. Because if you're really going to help your clients get solutions and get products that will help them the most, you need to be able to walk them through and walk away with a good conscience when you know that even though something may have a large impact to them, they have other things that they should take care of in the between time. So that's what I mean there. So ranking an opportunity versus other opportunities, it's one thing for me to say it. The reason that it's important, obviously, is because you need to know where you stand. Why waste time with an opportunity where you're really ranked low on the opportunity list of all the opportunities they're looking at inside the organization? But then also, it really does free them up to help and trust you. You make these decisions a lot, right? You help companies with these opportunities time and time again, but they probably do it very few times. And so any advice you have to help them make a good decision is helpful. So how do you do it? Is Greg, how do you get list out the impact? Uh, this is a multi-step process, but one of the things when you're talking to whoever you're talking to is you need to have a list of opportunities that they are looking at, and you need to push back against why it is that your opportunity is even being considered at this point. A lot of times you're talking to somebody inside the organization, an influencer, somebody who is tasked with doing research. And so you're working through the project with them. So they might not have the exact answer for you at the right time. But that being said, you can work with them and get a list out. And then it's really that list that you take around the organization and find out other things that they're looking at, other opportunities where they may be looking to invest their money and trying to decide what's best for them. So as an example, I had a wonderful opportunity with a large company that would have been a nice marquee company for me to put on my website, right? A big enough company that I could say, hey, look at these Fortune 100 companies that Greg works with. But as I was talking to the new director, who does need some help inside of even just inside of his department, when he was describing what he needed my help with, I could hear other priorities until I said, you need to tell me why you would rank this one above any of these other things that we've been talking about. And he looked at me and he said, that's a good point. These are other opportunities. Now, the good news is that even though that's happened, let's see, gosh, it's been a year and a half since we talked, every 2 months, I am still in touch with them. And the nice thing is I have that list of priorities. So now I've become kind of my own advocate in that I'm trying to get him to work through those other priorities, because I do think they're more important to the business than what it was that we were going to work on. However, I know that as soon as he gets a couple of those out of the way, now I have my own best case. He has a better case to take to the people he needs to put our program that we were talking about into place. So I don't know if I described that well enough for you, but in that case, it wasn't even that Greg was doing a great job of questioning. It's simply that he was offering it. I was listening and taking notes. And as I went down the list, with most of the people I talk to, there's probably 20 things they talk about that I have no idea how to help them with. And there's a half a dozen that I can help them with. And so in that giant list of everything that's going on, and I say, where do these things fit in? That's where it was coming out. And I was listening and I was thinking, man, you really do need to take care of this other stuff, which revolved around personnel and revolved around some global change that was happening in the organization, that I think is where the time is best spent. So uncovering opportunities, developing evidence, helping them develop evidence, really finding out what it is that they measure, how will they measure, how will they know that it's working for them, and then the impact of the organization, where ranking the impact of whatever opportunity you're talking about against other opportunities that they're talking about. Those are really the first two areas that I talk to business development people, that I talk to partners in law firms, partners in accounting firms, where we're trying to help them develop the opportunity. Because the third thing that I'm going to bring up under opportunities is what usually happens, which is the people that I work with and myself, I get sucked into this all the time, is we get tricked by the solution is the only way I can say that. Our clients love to hear about our solutions. We have developed some pretty cool solutions, and some pretty cool products, and we love to talk about them. They love to hear about them. The one thing that they don't like talking about is they don't really like talking about or looking for evidence that problems or opportunities exist inside their company. And they really don't like going through and ranking all of the opportunities against other opportunities. I mean, I say they don't like it, but I'm only saying that because it's just so much easier to talk about should we do this solution or should we not do this solution, as opposed to developing the opportunity. So when I say we are tricked by the solution, what I'm saying is we love talking about the solutions that we offer. They love talking about the solutions that we offer compared to other people who offer similar solutions. And when we talk about all that, we have a tendency not to explore any of the business reasons for why our solution exists. The reason that's important to you is because the more you can stay off of your solution, the more you can become, as I was telling another company I was working with this last week, the more you can become the salesperson who does not have anything to sell, the better opportunity you have for uncovering a really good opportunity. Because when they can explore freely all the different things that they're trying to accomplish in the business, all the problems that they're trying to solve, and all the results that they're trying to achieve, and you can simply hear those things and then react to a few of them, put them in rank order on what they should be working on now, or what you think they should be working on based on the input that they've been giving you. The more that they can do that, that's where a big game-changing opportunities come from. Things that make that mean a big deal to an organization, to individuals inside that organization. And the more that you can help that process occur, the better off you are. So it's a consulting approach for sure, and it works. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you, as an example, a bad example. So the other day I got pulled into, I thought was just a quick get to know you meeting. And the next thing I know, I'm looking at an org chart. And when I looked at that org chart, they're going through and they're comparing it to, I just finished this book, The Human Being's Guide to Business Growth. And it's like, how does your book help me? And so pretty soon we're knee deep in the solution. And the sad part is I didn't recognize it until the drive home. On the drive home, I was like, man, that felt good. I love talking about all the things I could do for the organization and blah, blah, blah. And we kind of got lost here and there, and he was looking for some examples. I wish I could have come up with some better examples, is what I'm thinking. And then it occurred to me, oh my gosh, Greg, you did it. You got sucked into spending all of your time on the solution. You never developed any evidence, right? You never really got to rank that evidence of the opportunity against other opportunities that they're looking at inside the organization. You're really nowhere. And next time you get in front of them, you're going to have to start over again if you get a chance to get in front of them again. Because here's the thing, when you go down the road of not getting off the solution, when you go down that road, your client goes down that road with you. And then once they kind of decide that's really not the solution for me, they move on, especially at the higher levels of the higher level executives that are working on big ideas. They just mentally move on. And so I hate to say, you've blown your shot, but many times that's how it feels. And it's a lot of work to get back in there and to really work past the impression that you're being branded as the guy that has that one solution. We considered it, but we're going a different direction. And the most painful part is when you hear the direction they're going and you think, oh, I can go that direction too. Like, I don't know that I would have chosen it, but that's definitely something I offer. And now I'm pigeonholed into something else. So that's really it. So those are 3 ways that you can be better at developing opportunities. And if we were working together, we would be working through those, which is, are you listening and acting on things that can be measured? Where is the evidence of the problem or result that they're trying to achieve? Where does that problem or result that they're trying to achieve and that you can actually solve, where does that rank? Like, what's the impact on the organization compared to other results or problems that they're trying to solve? And then how good can you get at staying away from your solution, giving them enough information to understand, to let them know that you can do this work, but then at the same time, really exploring the opportunity as opposed to worrying about what the solution is, and exploring the solution at the same time. So those are 3 things under opportunities, which leads naturally to the next big area where we see a leap. But opportunity, I'm just going to just hammer this one more time. Opportunities is the place. If I could work with anybody on anything, if you can develop new opportunities, bigger and better opportunities, that tends to fix a lot of problems because you have more shots at getting new business. The issue becomes when you get really good at developing opportunities is sometimes you develop opportunities that are bigger than you expected and bigger than you are prepared to fill. So when those things happen, there are ways, right? Fulfillment's actually one of the easier parts of once you are clear on an opportunity, fulfilling that opportunity is one of the easier parts. I know people get hung up on, well, we got to make sure we can deliver that. And most people can fill things when they really know what they're being measured on and how the opportunity is going to be played out. Where they have problems fulfilling is when opportunities are only half developed, or the return, right? That ROI, that return on investment, the return is never fully defined, and we don't know what we're working towards. So we're kind of chasing something that we don't even really know what it is, but we're just trying to make everybody happy. That's when problems occur, and more so than when we know exactly what we're after, and we know where it's going to show up inside, how it's going to be measured, and what the value is that's placed on each of those measurements. So how do we get through that piece of it? Once we've developed these bigger opportunities, the next step is we really need to start getting better at navigating the client's decision process. And so I have 3 ideas that I'll talk to you about that. And let me just go ahead and name them here. So the first one is getting the decision process steps out early, as opposed to late in the opportunity. Once we've developed the opportunity, then and we've all decided that we should keep moving forward on this, then getting those decision process steps out is the first thing, as opposed to thinking that you're talking to a decision maker. Getting an idea of what happens in each step in that process. So you're going to find that I'm really hung up on defining this, helping them define this process or understanding the process that they've already defined themselves. And then inside of that process, once you've figured out what the process steps are and what happens in each step, it's finding out which people inside that process are you being told that do not have much say, or they're going to just kind of gloss over the opportunity and the decision, separating those from the people who are really, they're kind of hiding, they're hidden decision makers. And we'll go through those. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Asking for the decision process steps first, not who, the language, if you're listening for it, the language is describe the decision process, your decision process to me in steps if you can. Like, what are the steps in the decision process? As opposed to talking to whoever you're talking to and saying, hey, who decides this? Like, who's going to make this decision? And if you could hear it in those 2 things, I kind of over exaggerated the second one. But when you're asking somebody who makes this decision and you're talking to them, what have you not included in that sentence that they probably hear? They hear the end of this. Who is going to make this decision? Because obviously it can't be you. Much safer to separate yourselves, both you and the person you're talking to, even if you think they are the decision maker, and really walk through that, have them describe the decision process and what steps are going to be taken. Not people. So what are the various steps that are going to be taken, and what are the people? So the reason it's important is just because of what I just said. It helps you lift it up from the egos. Right. There's a lot of studies out there that show that when we use the word decision maker and who really, really, really makes these decisions, everybody who's involved in it thinks that they're a key piece of the puzzle. I was involved a long time ago in a little merger and acquisition And as we were going through it, there's like six of us, and we're all trying to talk to this guy and help him make a good decision. And in the end, he makes the decision. It's a positive decision. And at that moment, right, success has many fathers. Everybody was the reason why he decided to say yes. And the real reason is I'm sure it was a combination of everybody, and nobody could take full credit as to saying the magic words that got him over the hump. But the reason I bring this up is because if in making a big decision, it is going through those steps. And using him as an example again, when he was going to be doing this merger, it was his first merger. He'd been in business for 20 years. It's probably his last merger, unless he goes out and acquires another company. But in that discussion, we would have been well served to really focus on not who was making the decision, because it was obvious it was him. And maybe you could say, oh, it was obvious it was him and his wife. But by defining a process, when it would come clear, if I would have asked that question to begin with, it would have become clear that there is no process. He does not have a process. So I would have been better served defining here's what a typical decision process, in this case, from your side, this is what it looks like. And also this is what it looks like on our side, trying to get this thing done. By defining each of the steps and then really getting into my next step is what happens in each step. Like, this is what this step is really for. That would have moved the process along at a much faster pace. The reason is because we could have put deadlines on each step. So instead of everybody kind of working on all the steps at once, we could have been narrowing it down to this is what we're doing at the first, second, third, fourth, fifth in general, right? I mean, I know that it still gets a little messy, but for the most part, if we would have given him a process to work within, it would have been easier for him to make decisions in each point, right? We would have found out, like, in this step, this is what happens in this particular step, and the decision that needs to be made. It isn't always yes or no. Sometimes it's just how far and how fast we're moving forward. And going through these things, that's where we screwed that one up, and why it really took so long, and why nobody should really take any credit for getting the deal closed in the end. Which is my second point, right? Getting an idea of what happens in each step. Again, the key is that it's not the people that are taking action inside of the step, but it is what is the organization trying to get done within that step in the process. It's important because, again, you do this all the time. You help people, you provide this service, they choose you, and you watch how they make that decision process. Once you've gotten good at kind of understanding how past clients have made the decision, you can really move forward into new clients and give them a roadmap for what it is that they should be doing. And when they give you a roadmap that they are using, you can double check it against what you've seen to be effective and not effective in the past. I can't stress enough. It's again, get really good at developing opportunities first. But the second thing you could do is you can walk through this piece where you help them understand what happens at each particular step. So if it goes from to a user committee, you could look at their process and think to yourself, usually at this point, we need to get the people who are actually going to be doing the work in the room. That would be a way that you suggest the step, right? This is a step. I'm not saying who does the step, but I am saying that this step is generally included in the process, right? Does that make sense? I hope it does. I can mentally see your heads nodding on this. An example of that is just that, right? It's including users. I find that oftentimes decisions are made at a high level, and in the end, there's somebody who needs to implement at least a piece of this. And if you don't get them involved in the decision, they tend to have the opportunity or the ability to either shoot it down before the decision gets made, or they shoot it down as you're trying to implement the solution, and they keep it from being implemented. I just heard a funny story yesterday of a guy sitting through a presentation, and his dad was part of this group, and they occasionally had this presentation of one of these Gallup type StrengthsFinder people would come through, and he was like, man, this is the greatest tool. Like I can't believe it's so great. Um, I need to I need to take advantage of this. And so he goes to license it, and as he goes and talks to his HR people are like, "Oh, we bought that 5 years ago." So, right, it's in that implementation piece of it that I'm guessing that what happened 5 years ago is it got started. The HR people, who obviously are very involved in using a tool like this, somebody else bought it, probably his dad, and they didn't have any buy-in as to why they were getting this tool in the in-house to begin with. And since nobody ever, right, the person sold it to them, sold them the license, never asked the question, they never got user buy-in at the same time, never got implemented. So here it is, just a dead investment. And then the decision got made a second time, but since there's already a dead investment in it, it got killed again. So things to think about as you go forward. It would be great if you could help them identify the steps, or listen to the steps, and then also insert what should happen in each particular step, as well as ask them. Like when you say that it's going to go to committee, what is the committee going to do? Like what happens inside that step? And then the last piece is obviously you're going to be getting in front of a bunch of people and helping them through this. And it's identifying the people who are rubber stampers is what I call them. They're just going to put a rubber stamp on it and it's just going to move through there. But Gail wants this as much as anybody, and identifying who those people are, and then figuring out whether or not Gail is really just going to rubber stamp this thing, or is she going to apply a whole new set of criteria? When we do market research with firms, one of the things that we look at is we say, hey, we don't ever want to be judged by someone where we have no idea what the criteria is as to how they're judging us, right? If I'm going to be judged, it's kind of like, why does an opportunity fail to meet expectations? A lot of times it's because we're being judged on criteria that we didn't know existed. And if we only knew, we probably could have done something about it, right? We won't go into all the reasons why this happens, other than to just say that it does happen. And so our goal is to always know the criteria. So in a brand new market, we'd like to know how we're going to be evaluated by that market before we ever go out into that market, right? So in that same way, these rubber stampers, it's just every time that if you know what the steps are, and you've gotten really good at identifying each of the steps, and you know what decision is going to be made inside those steps, when you are visiting those people or waiting for those pieces to be decided upon, it is a great idea to ask them, and what criteria are you using to give this a yay or a nay? Or to what would you see, hear, feel that would tell you this is a no? What would you see, hear, feel that would tell you, gosh, we should really move forward on this? And those are the pieces. So the goal is, right, to improve your selling skills when you do complex sales. These are multi-step. The nice part about a complex sale to me is that it is multi-step. So you have plenty of time for recovery in between. And if you get off on the wrong track, you can kind of get yourself back on track. To me, the fast sales cycles, there's just no room for error, right? There's usually low margin, and you've got to close right away. A larger deal, a merger and acquisition, right? You have a little bit of leeway in there where people can be human and things can happen. But the two areas where, if you're trying to develop these opportunities where you can make the biggest impact in your organization, is you can get much better at developing opportunities. And the three ways I say to think about that is, one, at developing, eliciting, getting evidence from your clients, putting that into impact and ranking that against other opportunities that they have. And then probably before both of those happen is really staying off of the solution, your solution and the thing that you'd love to talk about, as well as the solution that they would love to talk about. If we could just stay off of those things in opportunities, that is going to, I'd say if there's 100% improvement that happens with some of these people that I work with, that's probably 70% of it is getting much better at identifying opportunities. The other 30%, which is still a huge chunk, is getting really good at talking about the decision process. if you want to know what separates the absolute best that I've ever seen in sales from the people who are just really good, it is this idea that they can help, they are looked upon to help with the client's decision making process, and that's really it, because they're so good at doing this, at breaking it into steps, and then helping them define what it is that's going to happen in each one of those steps, and then letting the client do it. So those are the things. Since this is just a teleseminar, and some of you have already dropped off. I'm sorry if I kept chatting too long. This is what I have. And so hopefully this has been helpful to you. It should be helpful. It's helpful to the people that I work with. And then if you could, or if you still have questions, or if you want to go deeper into this, by all means, get in contact with me, especially around the examples. It's way better when the examples are not Greg, but when they're somebody else inside the when they're actually your industry or other examples that you can buy into. So thanks for listening, and I'll have this recording up and emailed to the rest of you that are on the call. Have a good Wednesday.